Let's talk about how close we are to potential World War III and nuclear warfare.
Way too close.
How could this go if it doesn't go? How could this end up in World War III?
I think a couple of different ways, right? So I'm sure that Russia has red lines, some of which we're not even aware of in Ukraine. You get to a situation where is a Russian red line crossed? They're a nuclear power. Do they start using tactical nuclear weapons in eastern Ukraine? If that happens, then probably at least some of the Eastern European countries like Poland have to get involved. That balloons into a World War III scenario. I think the most likely and the most dangerous scenario is Iran and Israel right now. So obviously the Israelis are on high alert. They just had this terrorist attack. They're dealing with Hamas. What if in North Israel, a bunch of Iranian-backed militias start killing thousands of Israeli civilians? Okay, so the Israelis invade, do the Iranians counterattack, and now you have Israel, Iran in a regional conflict. The Turks probably have to get involved. The Saudi Arabians probably have to get involved. And then that is the sort of thing that could balloon into World War III. And then the final thing, man, is China wants Taiwan, right? Everything that we have tells us the Chinese want Taiwan. America, I think, has left Taiwan in a really crappy position because we've sent all of our weapons to Ukraine. The Taiwanese, I don't know that they could repel a Chinese invasion right now. And so do the Chinese invade Taiwan? That leads to some sort of accelerating conflict there. So there are basically at least 3 hotspots in the world right now that each have the potential to become a major worldwide conflict. It's really scary. And this is one of the reasons why I say, you don't want an incompetent as president of the United States right now. You go back, look, there are some people I disagreed with. I disagreed with a lot of George W. Bush's foreign policies. Obviously disagreed with a lot of Barack Obama's foreign policies. But these were fundamentally capable human beings, right? Donald Trump is a capable human being. I think more than capable, but I'm biased. Kamala Harris is not a capable human being. Do you really want, in the midst of a high-pressure conflict, her negotiating with Xi Jinping about Taiwan? Or do you want her over there in Moscow or Kiev negotiating with the Russians, with Vladimir Putin, about the peace settlement in Ukraine? This is scary, scary stuff. And you're talking about a person like Kamala Harris who can't even answer a simple question without retreating into slogans and talking points. What about when the cameras are off and she's in a private room with world leaders? That's scary, scary stuff. And that's maybe what worries me about more than any of her domestic policies is what happens if the shit hits the fan. I don't think Kamala Harris can handle it.
Why do you think China hasn't made a move on Taiwan yet? It seems like every chess player on the globe has made the move since the Biden and Kamala took office. And so why hasn't China made their move yet? What are they waiting for?
I think there are a few different explanations, and maybe all of them are true, at least a little bit. I think one thing is, even in a relatively weakened position, it's not an easy military maneuver. So maybe the Chinese don't want to kill a lot of people, especially their own people. Maybe that destabilizes them politically. That's one solution, or one possible answer. I think another possible answer is, look, Xi Jinping, my understanding, and this is all, guesswork, we're sort of judging with imperfect information, but my understanding is that he is not in the strongest position politically right now, that 5 years ago, or maybe 5 years in the future, he'll be in a slightly stronger political position. And so maybe it's more likely to happen, say, not in 2027, as opposed to, so 3 years from now, as opposed to right now. The other thing that you hear is maybe the Chinese don't think they ultimately need it. Right. So maybe we're actually misunderstanding what their calculus is. Maybe their attitude is they can control Taiwan from the outside without ever having to invade it and control it from the inside. And there's probably some element of truth to all those explanations. But I think eventually, my guess is they're eventually going to make a real military move on it. It's probably going to be sooner rather than later. I hope not, but we'll see. Because right now, if they do it, we're not in a good position with the leadership we have.
Those are some perspectives I haven't heard before. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the border.
Sure.
So the border, I hear 11 million, 15 million, 21 million.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's millions and millions and millions of illegal immigrants that are calling the U.S. home now.
That's right.
We're paying for it. You guys have a plan. I'd like to dive into how exactly are you going to go after and remove all of these immigrants?
Yeah. So first, let me preface that because I think you got to stop the bleeding, right? Whenever you got a problem, somebody cuts your leg off, stop the bleeding, and then figure out how you're going to reattach the leg. The stop the bleeding thing that we have to do is reclose the border, right? Re-implement deportations, re-implement the Remain in Mexico policy. I think people don't fully realize that the reason the border is such a nightmare is that somebody will come into the country, say that they're seeking asylum, and if you're Border Patrol, you have to let them into the country. They get a work permit, they can live in the country for 10, 12, 15 years, and then maybe 10, 12, 15 years later, they get a court date to adjudicate whether their asylum claim is legitimate. But of course, most of them don't show up for that court date, right? So that's one of the main reasons why you have an open border. The way that Trump solved that is he made all these people wait in Mexico while their asylum claim was being adjudicated, which which means a lot of people never came to begin with because they didn't want to go to Mexico. They wanted to go to the United States, right? So you re-implement those policies, you get illegal immigration back down much lower. It's well north of 10,000 a day under the last couple of years of Kamala Harris's leadership. Get it much lower, and then you figure out what to do with I think it's probably 25 million illegal aliens who are here right now. So the way I think about this, and I'm asked by the media about this all the time, and I always say, it's like eating a sandwich, right? It's like asking somebody, okay, how are you going to eat this sandwich? It's 10 times as big as your mouth. Well, you take the first bite, then you take the second bite, then you take the third bite, right? You do this sequentially, and I think that's how you have to think about it. So you start with the million illegal aliens who are violent criminals, who have committed violent crimes in the United States of America, and you do everything that you can. You round them up, you get them out of this country. You just have to, right?
How do you know who the criminals are?
Because most of them have actually committed crimes in the country,
okay,
right? So either they're in American jails or they were released. I mean, Kamala Harris has released a lot of people who were arrested for committing violent crimes, and then some of them go on to commit further violent crimes. Some of them are just bouncing around. They probably are committing crimes but not being caught. But that's a real law enforcement focus. Get the violent criminals out of here and you focus on them. And I think there are a few other things you got to do to make it, frankly, harder for illegal immigrants to take advantage of the country, right? You got to end the Social Security fraud and the Medicare fraud so that people aren't able to get free benefits, free health care. What I think we ought to do, I actually have a piece of legislation on this in the Senate, is you tax remittances, right? Because you think about somebody comes in here, they're an illegal alien, they're working, and they're sending all their money back home. They're not going to send their money back home if you tax the money that they're sending back home. So they'll go back to their country of origin. If they want to come, maybe they'll apply for a legal pathway, but they're not going to come in illegally. And I think you also got to make it harder for employers to hire illegal labor, right? I mean, this is one thing that I think, Republicans, we've got to sort of accept is part of the problem is illegal aliens breaking our laws. Part of the problem is employers are encouraging them to come in and break our laws because they'd much rather pay aliens to work in this country. I think you solve a whole chunk of the problem.
How would you, we tried to lock the border up first go around.
Yep.
What's going to change this go around?
So a couple things. First of all, it wasn't perfect when Trump was president, but man, it was very good.